Malibongwe. Igama lamakhosikazi. Wathinta abafazi. Wathinta imbokodo. My name is Nokcawe Mafu. I'm the Deputy Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture. I am also a member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. I am here to participate and share knowledge and hear what the people of Vryburg want to hear around the issue of women empowerment. I'm a nurse by profession. I worked as a nurse for a long time. I can't even count the years. But at some point, I worked for the Truth and the Reconciliation Commission. Those that know the TRC. When it was formed, I worked for the TRC doing counseling and briefing for those victims that came to share their pain and their story in front of the Truth Commission. You might not see me now because I have dreadlocks. At that time, I had an afro. So when you see my pictures, you would see a young girl with an afro. Yeah. I am very passionate about women empowerment in general, as someone who actually understands and who actually is a woman herself. I was the Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress Women's League in 1997 when the Women's League had its conference in Rustenburg. So I understand where you're coming from, but we will hear and we will share. But I thought it's important that you know that amongst yourselves is just somebody who is actually the same as yourselves. The title Deputy Minister is nothing. I'm just like you. If I could speak Tswana, but unfortunately I'm Xhosa. So I didn't want to speak Xhosa because very few of you would understand. So that is why I'm speaking English. Otherwise, it is not to disrespect you. I could speak Tswana if I could. Niyanixolela? Thank you so much. Esenicelile musu ukuthi nizokhuluma ngesingisi angithi nangivumela nathi anisazi isiXhosa. Ane? Okay. Anisazi isiXhosa. Niyasazi? Anisazi. Manje khuluma isiXhosa ngeke undizwe at all. Yabona ke inkinga ke isitswana sona dololo. But on a serious note, I think it is very important to note what my panelists have been saying here. I think one of the important things that they are raising is that history is very important. It is very critical to know where you come from so that you are able to know where you are going. Everybody here that has been speaking, they've been touching on the 1956 march, on the role of women, because it becomes important to understand what is it that the women of this country have done to play a role in the democracy, to bring about democracy. But I think I want to raise one important fact, that whilst we all talk about 1956 march, 2 years before that, the women of South Africa came together in 1954 and came out with a women's charter. And the importance of this charter is that even the Freedom Charter that most people talk about in 1955, that was adopted in Kliptown, most of the clauses of that Freedom Charter comes from the Women's Charter. The women were the leader of democracy in this country. And I think it's important for me to note that. To note the fact that women have always been the leader of the pack. Women have always been actually a step forward in terms of making sure that we will actually liberate this country. In 1956, when the women of this country marched, one important thing that we should note there is that when they arrived in Pretoria, by this time, because we are now meeting here, talking to each other, I think the trains were already on its way close to Pretoria by this time. But the important thing about that march is that when they arrived in Pretoria and decided that they are going to go and give a memorandum, they understood that South Africa can only move forward and be liberated if we are united, if we understand what social cohesion is about. That is why the 4 leaders of the women that went to deliver the memorandum, Mamu Rahima Musa, Mamu Sophie de Bruyn, Mamu Helen Joseph, and Mamu Lillian Ngoyi. Those 4 women, the importance of them is that they were colored, Indian, white, black. Now, the importance of that is that even at that time, in 1956, women knew that united we stand, divided we will not move forward, we fall. Women understood that. Another important thing that we must understand about women is that when all leaders of the African National Congress at the time were arrested in 1956 in the treason trial, women rose up and led the struggle. If you read your history, from 1957 up to early 80s, you don't hear much about men leadership because most of them were in prison. But you hear a lot about the role of Mamu Albertina Sisulu, the role of Mamu Winnie Mandela, the role of Mamu Lillian Ngoyi, the role of Helen Joseph herself, the role of Sophie de Bruyn. Because what happened is that when the leadership of the ANC went to prison, they filled the gap. Now, one wants to believe, therefore, that without women, actually we wouldn't have had freedom. Because the aim of the apartheid regime at the time was to actually destroy the struggle. But women understood that the struggle continues. So they stood up and took the baton and moved on with the struggle. And I think it's important for us to remember that. Now, I'm raising these things because in 1985, we jump the role of young people because we're not talking about them today. But in 1983 up to 85, when the leadership of this country decided that there must be a mass movement that actually make sure that abantu baseMzantsi Africa, they understood that we are still struggling. We are not liberated yet. When UDF was formed, United Democratic Front, Mamu Albertina Sisulu was asked to lead the UDF because of her role and understanding of the struggle. Now, these are important things that you should understand. So that when you talk about today and why we are celebrating 1956, you actually understand that the liberation that came in 1994 came because women actually played that particular role. So I don't want people to think that masikhuluma nge-50% today and demanding our place in the struggle. We are asking for a favor. We are not. We are demanding what is ours. Is it understood? That is why in 1991, when the African National Congress had its conference for the first time inside the country, in Durban, when everybody was nominating a man, women stood up and had a caucus and say, we demand 30% of this leadership to be women. Not because we were confused. We understood that this liberation can only move faster if the women are there. In 1991, we demanded 30%. But in 1997, in Mafeking, we demanded 50%. Now you must understand these rules, because it is not an accident of history. It is but the history of South Africa. Now, when we demanded 50% in 1997, some men thought that we were actually asking for the impossible. We are demanding too much. It was not because we were demanding too much. It is because we understood that the struggle in South Africa is intertwined with the struggle for women emancipation. Now, when Rose raises issues that you are facing today, she raises issues of crime. She raises issues of unemployment. She raises issues of people that are being abused. And we must pause a bit and actually say, each one of us, are we still playing our role as women the way that we should be playing here in South Africa in actually building a better country? Remember, struggle continues. There is no holiday in the struggle. Now, what we have done as South African women is to assume that because we voted in 1994, because the laws that are being mentioned here that were passed because we fought for, the laws about domestic violence, the laws about protection of harassment, we thought, okay, we've done now, we are fine. We can rest. Now, the moment you rest, democracy reverses. All the things that you have achieved move back. Because kaloku, what happens in democracy is that it is dynamic. It continues. Ukuba ngaba anikwazi ukuziorganize nibe ngamakhosikazi that are able to keep on raising your voices, all these things are going to reverse. Now, what must we do? It becomes important that our voice becomes heard all the time. We are not going to have a violence against women just disappearing when ourselves, we are actually aiding that violence. We are not going to have unemployment being dealt with when ourselves, we are sitting in the corners and not doing what the little girl has been saying here. We stood up with my team and we understood what is it that we want, and we knocked on doors and we demanded what is our right. That's what we must do as women. Women need to understand that laws and the Constitution are an enabler of you to go and be able to demand that you couldn't demand before because the laws were not allowing you to do that before. Now you've got laws that are allowing you to do these things. You can knock kwamasipala ubuze, Mayor, what are the policies in this municipality that are actually about to help women and empower them? Can you organize us? Usixelele Mayor into yobana uzawusenzela ntoni? Deputy Minister, you are the Deputy Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture. What is your department going to do for us as women? What is it that we can be able to knock on your door because you are empowered? You are empowered to help us. I'm not empowered for myself. I am empowered for you. So if I cannot be able to enable you to move forward from where you are, I am as good as not a deputy minister. You understand that? Our positions that we are given as leaders must be able to help you to move forward. Right? Now, as we celebrate the 63 years of the march to Pretoria, it must be about not only understanding the history, but what is it that in 2019, a woman of South Africa can learn from this and be able to say, because those women fought for me and I am here now, I am liberated. What is it that me, myself, and I is able to do for myself?